it becomes a question: how difficult is it going to be to defend this man if charges are ultimately brought against him? Because we've seen cases before where officers claim that they saw a weapon. I mean, the report is that Coy said there's a gun in his other hand, there's a gun in his other hand. If he legitimately believed that, but yet another officer at the scene didn't see that and didn't see a threat, how successful could a defense be for him if he's ultimately charged?
Well, how could they defend him? Or, in other words, how could they win the defense? Well, you could just look to the Rodney King case for an example of that, where you get a bunch of former officers on the jury, if you will, out in a place where they all retire to. Or you go with the typical defense they always go with, which is, well, he was afraid. He was frightened by the black man. And if he's frightened, he's allowed to do whatever he wants to because that's what they sell. That's the story they sing every single time, which is, oh, he's afraid. And until we drill down and just take it apart and you see that there are training and policies and procedures that if you truly are afraid you're to do these other things before you take your gun out and kill somebody, and if the other person escalates the situation and gets more violent, then you're warranted using deadly force. But clearly there was none of that here. So will the defense be successful? Well, I guess that depends on who the judge allows in for the jury.
And maybe I'm a little premature because Tiffany, no charges have been filed against him, right? And the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation is looking into this. What happens next? What are they ultimately looking for? What could be the charges here? How does this process work?
Well, it does take time to investigate. So I'm sure that they're going through the internal process to investigate the officer's claims. And especially if you have the other officer at the scene saying a totally different story. My hope, of course, is that the officer that shot Andre Hill is charged with murder because, again, there is nothing illegal about coming out of your garage with a cell phone in your hand. There is nothing illegal about having your hands in your pocket. We have to look back at the phone call that was made that brought these Ohio officers to his home. It was a non-violent emergency. So if you are called for a non-violent emergency, why are you the one bringing deadly force? Deadly force was not reasonable, and Officer Coy should be charged with murder.
Well, listen, like you said, it's early. We're going to see what ultimately happens, how this is going to unfold. But right now, he has been fired. That is the first step, and we'll see where it goes. Before our last break, I had mentioned that we dealt with a case of a convicted murderer being released. Now let's talk about a convicted murderer who may no longer serve his sentence in America. Italian filmmaker Enrico Forti, he was convicted of the 1998 murder of Anthony Pike, and he's been serving a life sentence in Florida prison for the past 2 decades. He may now finish his time in his native land of Italy. Governor Ron DeSantis conditionally approved the transfer, which was at the request of the Italian government and the DOJ, which have been, I got to tell you, at odds and pushed him at odds and put him at odds with the state prosecutors. This is very interesting, Joseph. I know we've seen things like this happen before, but what is the rationale for a man who was convicted of murdering another human being in America to serve the remainder of his sentence in his homeland of Italy? And I know there are a lot of voices in Italy. There's a lot of people who believe that he's innocent. There's been a lot of attention to this. So there's a lot of support for him back home. But what's the rationale to send him back there?
The rationale is based upon a treaty that existed between this government, Italy, and ours, and many other European governments long before Forty was convicted. That treaty or that law says that if you take in this case, Italian citizen, and you convict him in your foreign country, United States, that we can make an agreement which allows that person, that convicted person, to serve out their sentence in the country of their origin. Now, what could be one of the reasons behind why they made that law? It is because now the Italian government is paying to incarcerate that person. It is not cheap to keep any one person housed, fed, Medicared for, etc. It is expensive. And so, why shouldn't the Italian government pay for that person's incarceration? Another question could be, if you want to keep him in the US and take up that space and have that cost, then have the Italian government pay for it here in the US. But still, that's the rationale behind it.